I will say, whoops, spill. Cut in B-roll. It's my buddy Pierre's favorite cider, for whatever that's worth. Thanks for bringing it back to the liquid.
Yeah, you gotta rein me in, man.
Yeah, a little ad for You Pick Orchards, everybody. What's going on, everybody? My name's Greg, the head cider maker and beverage production manager here at Wilson's Orchard. And this here is Paul Rasch.
Yep, I'm Paul, one of the owners of this wreck of an operation, and yeah, good to be here.
And for whatever reason, Paul has okayed me to do a video series where I can just drink instead of making cider. Normally, if I'm doing a tasting, I will usually start dry to sweet and more nuanced flavors, but today I'm going in a range of biggest to smallest producer. So that starts us here with Cider Company and their dry product called Joker. Ace is out of Sebastopol, California, family owned. Started back in 1993. Owned by the House family, some good people. This is their dry cider. They list it as an ultra dry. I'm not too privy to the ACA's new dry standards. I probably should be, but ultra dry. Champagne yeast on it, 6.9%. Hopefully clean and crisp.
Yeah, and that area is kind of an interesting area in California because used to be, there was a lot of one particular variety called Gravenstein, which really dominated that area. It was used a lot for baking apples. It's a tart apple out of Russia originally. And so there's a lot of old Gravenstein orchards, although in today's appledom, there's not a lot of commercial Gravensteins grown anymore, but it is an interesting apple growing area in California. I mean, point of interest, that's where Steve Jobs used to work, right? A Gravenstein orchard, hence the name Apple. And yeah, I think Gravenstein is what boosted his brain power, actually.
Yeah, I got one on my forearm right there.
All right, cheers. Let's try this swill. Well, the nose isn't too welcoming, I would say. I mean, it's got a bit of funky. I've been trying to place the nose of this a little bit, but yeah, it's either not really clean fermented or something's happened there. But it is nice and dry and crisp.
They do add malic on the back end, judging by their ingredients list. With that malic on the back end, you know, you get hints of that green apple, or at least on my palate plays like that. Get some wine characteristics from that champagne yeast. Yeah, I mean, if you're a white wine drinker, to be honest, and maybe this is just where I'm at, just had a bunch of barbecue up there at the smokehouse. It wasn't as dry. If you're gonna call something ultra dry, it didn't play that dry on my palate. But if you're a Prosecco drinker, you know, this could be a good entry point into the cider world for you at an affordable range. Not gonna break your bank. All right, so next up in order of size, I guess you could say, bigness, volume produced, is Towns Ciderworks out of Corvallis, Oregon. This is I have it listed as an off-dry, might lean a little bit towards like a medium semi-sweet, but 6% alcohol. It's their bright cider. They make it with their Newtown Pippin apple. Which you say we got some on the orchard to play around with?
Yeah, not a lot, but we've dabbled with them. It's an old school apple, mostly known in the East Coast. You know, people call it a heirloom variety. It's a late season apple, kind of early part of the late season a lot of times, and you know, it's nothing to look at, but it does, as my dad would say, it eats good, and it does improve with storage, like a lot of winter apples. So. Yeah, I mean, it's a really nice blend of tartness. It's got quite a smooth flesh. I was just telling Greg that, you know, we've not had a lot of them to mess with, but what we have, we've done a shit job of turning into a nice cider, so we'll try again. This has really interesting, complex notes on the nose, I think. Very nice.
Agreed.
For dessert apple. I mean, we should mention here that the ciders we're talking about today they're not the big guys like, Angry Orchards or something like that, but they are big in the sort of craft world. Secondly, all the ciders we're trying today are made with more or less with dessert apples. So dessert apples are apples that you'd find generally in the grocery store. And to make a really nice cider out of dessert apples, I mean, you're starting with one hand and most of the other tied behind your back, okay? Because it just, there's no tannins there. It's really hard to make a nice complex cider. So you're really down to, what the yeast can do for you, right?
It's all about fermentation health when it comes to these style ciders. Not saying you want to screw up your ferments when you're messing around with, beautiful tannic ciders like Yarlington Mill or Davenay, whatnot. But faults, if you screw up your ferment, yeast get a little unhappy. It really does shine through on these. In the beer world, or if I were to compare it to something in the beer world, is like a Pilsner, right? And if you go to a craft brewery and you don't see a Pilsner on the menu, in my opinion, you walk out the door because they don't know what they're doing. But yeah, so really nothing to hide behind. I personally, when it comes to doing ciders with dessert fruit, I tend to lean off dry to semi-sweet because it really allows the apples, back sweetening with apple juice really allows that to come through. Could potentially hide a fault in the ferment, but adds a little bit of complexity that may otherwise not be there if you're just going straight, pure, zero residual sugar dry.
But this one is, to me, it's nice and clean. It's got some fruity notes to it. It is, maybe tending a little bit on the sweet side. But yeah, it's got nice nose, nice fruitiness. Seems very, very clean. The ferment seems very clean.
Absolutely. Yeah, great culture, and real decent product, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, this is a nice drink. Clean, easy on the nose, a little bit of complexity there, and maybe from the Newtown Pippin. Yeah, probably. Yeah. Well done, guys.
Next on the list here, we have Stem Cider. They're out of the Denver area. I think they just opened this beautiful new facility, production and tap room called Acreage in Lafayette, Colorado. This is their off-dry, 5.8%. If this is worth noting, this is the first one that's not adding malic on the back end. So see what it smells like.
It's got a lot of fizz to it. Nice, decent nose. It's pretty clean.
Certainly clean ferment, yeah.
Very crisp. I think, like you said about the Ace one, I think this, would really appeal to a white wine person because there's a lot of fruity notes in here.
Absolutely.
There's a lot going on there. I think this is a really decent attempt myself at taking dessert apples and turn them into a really swillable product.
Yeah, there's getting like almost pear notes.
Yeah,
there's that like melony, fruity pear, which I know certainly if you run a fermentation with a white wine yeast well enough, those esters can shine through and really help you along.
Yeah, this is a job well done, I think, on this one. It's good company. They're doing good things. Yeah. The Colorado industry for fruit is all on what they call the western slope. So if if you're in Denver, you got to go on the other side. You got to go to the western side over towards Grand Junction, Peonia, out in there. And there's like little microclimates out there. And of course you're at Colorado being mountainous, you're on the western slope. So the further up the mountain you go, the colder it gets. That would mimic sort of going north. So if you go up the mountain, you're going to get more acidity. You go down the mountain, and of course there's a lot of sunlight, you're going to get sweeter. They can grow peaches out there, whereas at one point we were looking at orchards out in that area, and I tell you the number of orchards that used to exist on the eastern slope, say around Boulder and Fort Collins and Denver area, it was pretty impressive, but they're all gone. And the reason is they get hail and they get these freezes. You just heard, when was it, in April, Denver had like the biggest snow that they've had in April ever, right?
Yeah.
and it was 60 degrees one day and it's 20 degrees the next. So, fruit trees don't like that too much. But they do grow a lot of fruit out there, particularly well known for peaches, but there are some apples out on that western slope. I don't know if these guys source any out there, but I would guess that there must be something interesting. This is not, a lot of ciders in the U.S., as we've been saying, come from dessert apples. Well, where do dessert apples grow? By and large, it's Washington. Yep. Washington's numero uno, and then New York, and then Michigan. But you take Michigan and New York put together, doesn't even compare to Washington. And so a lot of the apples that go into the ciders, whether craft ciders or other, come from Washington. And that's a particular fruit, okay? It's number one, it's a limited number of varieties. It's a lot of Gala and Brayburn, Red Delicious will be in there, and increasingly Honeycrisp, now Cosmic Crisp. And that's just to say there's a limited complexity there. Whereas if you go to Michigan or New York, and I'm sure in Colorado, there's a lot of older varieties still available. And you can get a lot of, say, Jonathan out there, which has a really interesting, complex flavor. You can get things like Ida Edge. You can get, not so much in the way of heirloom varieties, but there are some. It's just in Washington per se. If you're driving a big hard cider enterprise, you're going to be using a lot of apples that are basically pretty bland, I guess is the kind way to say it. It just is. So that's why you have to add malic, because the pH is going to be relatively high, and you don't want a high pH, not for a good ferment. It's going to affect the flavor, so you have to add malic. It changes the flavor a little bit. But this, I think, is a good example of a cider that seems to have a fair bit going on just from the apple itself, and I think it's very well fermented. I'm pretty impressed.
And given that, what Paul's just saying about the lack of complexity in sort of the U.S. fruit, that's why you sort of, if you look at the map of the U.S. and you travel westward, to be quite frank, a lot of people, certainly west of the Rockies, are using one of two suppliers for their juice. I guess more importantly, or more to the point of trying to add complexity and differentiate yourself, you see a lot of cider makers using adjuncts. As you go further westward, it's more about like, hey, let's get some pineapple in here, or get some prickly pear or whatever it may be, guava, hops. Yeah, I mean, usually if you look at a map, and it's starting to really become more of a thing nationwide, but when we got started back in 2014, 2015, it was like, how do you differentiate yourself? Because we're all sort of using the same fruit. We all have access to the same fruit. So it's won by yeast, mainly champagne or wine. Some people are using ales. There are cider yeasts coming out on the market more widely available, but let's throw some other stuff in there because we're all using, Washington fruit. Shouldn't say we all,
that's I mean, I think that's the point of differentiation as we go forward is, like we're trying hard to grow a lot of fruit that makes an interesting cider, and there are plenty of cider makers, craft cider makers out there that are doing the same thing, and so if you can grow your own or have access to unusual varieties or varieties that have some particular level of complexity, it just changes things in a very remarkable way. So, if you're drinking really highly sweetened hard ciders, you're not going to notice it. But once you start to dry things up, then you really start to notice, oh, there's that hint. Like you were saying, there's hints of pear in this that you will not get from a cider that's just made with straight up Washington apple, sort of commercially produced Washington apples. You're just not going to get that. You can try your best and you can do a nice ferment. You can make an interesting cider by, like you said, either through yeast addition or adding some other fruits to it or something like that. But if you want just an apple forward crafted cider, you need something that's got some complexity. And by and large, in today's world, you got to grow it yourself or have access to somebody that is, because the supermarkets aren't screaming for Gold Rush or Roxbury Russet or Golden Russet or any of the other varieties that we like.
The supermarkets are wrong, by the way.
Yeah.
They're just wrong.
But I mean, what everybody's into right now in supermarkets is crunch, right? When I was growing up in this business, it was red, so that if you had a Red Delicious, well, the next one had to be redder than that. And then they introduced Gala, which had a really interesting flavor, Cox Orange Pippin coming through. And then what do? We screw that up by making it redder and redder and redder to where it starts to look like Red Delicious. And then they're like, oh no, we don't want it to look like Red Delicious. Nobody likes Red Delicious anymore. So then they start to back off on the red. And now what's the new red is crunch, right? So Honeycrisp comes along. Consumers go crazy for crunch. And then you got people that are just crazy about it's got to be crunchy. You got to break your damn teeth eating this apple in order for consumers to like it. And it's just kind of funny how that drives planting decisions by farmers, and increasingly it just narrows the window of what's acceptable for a commercial grower to plant. Because if you're out here like we are selling to families that come out and pick their own and stuff like that, what they want is an experience, number one, but they want something that tastes interesting. They don't want the same thing that are in the supermarkets. Whereas if you're a big commercial grower, you can't afford to grow anything that supermarkets don't want. It just doesn't make any sense. That makes perfect sense to play by the rules, stay in that lane, and grow. This year it's Cosmic Crisp. Next year it'll be something else. It's just that's what you do. And the hard cider industry is wagged by that tail. I mean, we're just sitting there taking whatever we can from, the kind of what we say, the back end of the apple grader, the thing that grades these apples. Whatever's left is what you get. And those varieties are just limited in the complexity that they have. So.
All right, next cider up is some random orchard. Do you know they make cider in Iowa? That's news to me. But
they must make it out of corn.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Corn cider.
Corn cider. This is Wilson's Orchard and Farm. This is the Goldfinch. It is an off-dry, leaning a little bit towards maybe closer to the semi-sweet, but someone told me, I don't know who, someone told me we're working on, or they, excuse me, they are working on drying it out.
That's what I heard too. Yeah. They better work on their label too. Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at the
label application is just absolutely atrocious. Yeah. Fresh pressed apple juice. The nice thing about this, so I hear, uses is blended with Gold Rush off of the orchard. Should we give the ruse up?
Yeah, I mean anybody that makes something with Gold Rush, I'm all ears for, because it's just a nice. Oh, I get it. So Goldfinch is the state bird of Iowa. I mean, people probably didn't know that.
That's knowledge. That's knowledge right there.
That's solid.
You can't even fake that knowledge.
And I mean, Gold Rush, nice fruit. This, I think, fairly clean smelling. It's got a little bit of nuance to it.
This particular batch, I think, turned out pretty well. The batch before, I think, was a little bit challenging, but
it's a little sweeter than it should be.
Yep.
Don't you think?
I would agree.
They should dry this out.
They should dry it out.
Absolutely dry this out.
Somebody told me they should dry it out.
Yeah, I think so too. Dry you out too, buddy.
Yeah. But this would be sort of an entry level, straightforward, apple forward cider. Yeah, that Gold Rush. I can't. This is not going to be an ad for this company, but it is something special to know that the Gold Rush that's in this specifically came hundreds of feet from the cidery, supposedly. Yeah.
Gold Rush, I know, is one of the few dessert apples that has a bit of tannin to it. So, to make a kind of complex cider, you need a bit of tannin, I believe. You need yeast management, of course, and the right processes and stuff. But Gold Rush is an apple that has a little bit of tannin. It's got a lot of tartness. It's got sweetness. It's really It's got a thick enough skin that it gives you some results out of that. It's quite an interesting apple. So yeah, anybody making a hard cider out of Gold Rush, I'm all ears. And yeah, that's not a bad
take on it.
Bad take.
All right, so the next one up is Far West Cider. They are out of the Bay Area, Richmond, California. They do have a family farm and orchard in what we like to call the Central Valley of California, just over the hills there from what we call the East Bay. Great agricultural area. Proper dry, 6.9%. As it says on the label, 0 residual sugar, bone dry. Let's see what it is.
You can certainly get that champagne yeast kind of dryness and on the nose and on the palate.
Yeah, out of all that have claimed to use champagne that we've tried today, I think this one plays the most with that. Or you get most of that, yeah.
So for a consumer that is new to cider, this may be slightly challenging. For somebody that's drank a lot of ciders, I would definitely try this. It's, I think, very clean. It's got a lot of the characteristics, as I said, of champagne yeast fermentation, which is bone dry, and it's kind of an aggressive cider to my way of thinking, just because it's really what you get if you just do a really nice. It's very clean. I mean, the ferment is super clean. It would be hard to conceal it if if it was this dry and you didn't do a good job fermenting it, it would really shine through. But this is nice and clean on the nose, on the palate, nice carbonation. It gives you a really good idea about, you take dessert apples, ferment them dry. This is what we used to call our base cider.
Yep.
And one of the things here is that when we started doing the cidery, we produced a base cider. We put it in bottles for the bar to make drinks. And people started ordering this stuff.
Yep.
And it's a nice drink, just like this. Just dessert apples, bone dry, drink it up.
Yeah.
It's, yep.
Throw some orange juice in there maybe if you're having a brunch.
Yeah.
If you're into that
If
sort
you
of
have
thing.
to.
I don't know, Paul. I don't know if you're a mimosa guy. I can't.
Well,
tell
I mean, I do like mimosa with, and this is the right cider to do it with.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't want something sweet to begin with and then go this way.
Yeah, as Paul was saying, I mean, that is a clean ferment.
Nice. Well done, guys. It's good.
And lastly, on this list here, at least for this video, probably a good timing because we didn't bring a dump bucket, and feeling a little fine for a Friday.
Yeah.
Is Blindwood Cider. This is, out of all the lists, this is the smallest cider company we have. It's just 3 people, Drew, Kathy, and Aaron, and Drew's a part-time or full-time paramedic. I don't know if that's changed. It's been a while since we actually chatted, but good friends of mine when I was in the Bay Area. Really to push this industry forward, I guess, and really help small-time producers like people like Blindwood, Far West. I mean, shit, I'd throw us in there.
Yeah.
COVID was or is still. I mean, it's still going on. It's going to affect the alcohol industry for quite some time. I just got an email about some packaging still going up in price, and that's just going to be, there's going to be waves of this going on. You as a consumer, you as viewing this video, you can help your local producers, your regional producers out by just supporting them, going out, picking up their product when restrictions lift in your local area, maybe heading out to their tap room if you feel safe enough to do so. Just support your local producers.
I mean, America was built on hard cider. I mean, it was, the pioneers and stuff like that. There wasn't a lot of crafting to that, but there is today, and there's the potential to really build an interesting cider culture here. But that depends on consumers getting out there and supporting the people that are, sticking their necks out a bit. And a lot of it is, the smaller producers. So, do your part. Get out there and try these things. And And you know, it's interesting. You know, it is an industry that is very akin to the wine industry, where you can grow the fruit that goes into the product, and the complexity, the terroir that is developed in Iowa or New York or California is very much a unique signature, and it comes through in the product. So, you know, support that kind of uniqueness and diversity. Yeah. Get out there and do some drinking.
And a lot of these companies that we had on this list, and we'll do in future videos, are available online. There are companies that will distribute to your door. There might be a little bit of sticker shock up front, but if you break down the cost, it's about $7 a cider. So, you know, replace that. You know, bring some cider in and have a little night in instead of going out to the bar or whatever.
We're seeing what works. You know, the cider industry is so interesting because it's both old, as in, you know, it's what a lot of the pioneers were into, but it's new in that the whole thing's being reinvented as we speak, and a lot of people trying to figure out what it's going to be like and what products make sense for the market, but also for the culture that's involved. And yeah, so the only way that works is if it's got people's support, and the only way that works is if you get it in your gullet. So,
all right, everybody, thanks for watching, and cheers, Paul.
Cheers. Well, that went well.